Okay, we're going to start out with the legs. We're going to make 2 tables, so I need 8 legs length. Here are 2 sets of legs, milled to final dimensions, marked for orientation, and the next thing to do is to lay out and cut the mortices. It is extremely easy to get these mixed up, to cut a mortise on the wrong side or the wrong end of the piece. So you can see how I've marked them. This horizontal line is the front. So this will be the front face of the legs. I can always go back, assemble these things in this configuration and tell what goes where. Second thing is, I'm always going to rely on the outside face, this face and this face of this piece to be square. I've checked it for square this way, and every time I mark a line, I'm going to put my square against that face. I marked it with a little squiggly mark. It's always going to be in this fashion, never on the other side. I don't know that it's square. I don't trust it. I'm always going to put the square here to mark this way. This face here, on this face, I mark this face. Over here, the square is going this way. Not that way. It's going this way against this, what I know here, to mark that. Then when I mark this side over here, against the face with this, always this part of the square is going against the surface with the squiggly line on it. That keeps things straight and more accurate. So my mortise for the aprons and the top of the legs is 3 inches long. Starts 1 inch from the top and goes down to 4 inches from the top. So I need lines marked across, like so, with the square against the outside face. Mark a line at 1 inch and 3 inches. I measure down this way with a 4 inch, this square with the 1 inch. Then I'm going to line them all up, get my marks lined up. Just double check that I didn't make a mistake anywhere. I want to be sure they line up. And they do. Now I don't care if the mortise, if these dimensions are exactly 1 inch and 4 inches. What I do care about is that they're all the same. I don't care if they're off 1/8 of an inch. But I want them all to be off the same amount. That's the difference between precision and accuracy. I'm looking for precision. I don't care about the accuracy at this point. Okay, I've got the mortises marked for this set of legs, but I've got to double check. This will be the front legs. I've got one mortise in each leg going towards the back of the table. I have a 3/8 marked here, marking the outside edge of the mortise from the outside of the leg. The little squiggly mark is there, showing me where I put the square. On the other side of the table, same dimension. Take another square, marking the inside edge. Then I cross hatch where the mortise is going to be. All of this is to give me some level of assurance that I'm not cutting the mortise in the wrong place. Now we go to the back legs, which will be this pair. We'll turn them over, so I'm looking at the inside of the table. We get an identical set to this set over here for the front. So this apron here will go from here to here, and this apron here will go from here to here. So if I put them like so, they should line up. But also on the back, I have an apron going across the back being over here. I have an apron going across the back, and I have a pair of mortises measured from the outside face of the leg, noted by this curly Q here and the one here. This is all an effort to keep all your mortising on the right position on the correct side of the leg. It's very, very easy to mix them up. So we got those in the right place now. I think I'll check them again before I start to cut. Here is a sample leg I made some years ago. I want to show this joint. This joint will go at the bottom of the drawer, front of the table. It's what is called a double tusk mortise. The reason for it is I have face grain doubled here. If I put in a regular mortise, I wouldn't have enough face grain glue surface on either piece. So I'm putting in two, and this is a difficult joint to cut, but I'll show you how I do it. Anyway, it fits in like so, and this one fits very tight. You can see the joint is closed up tightly. So I'm going to lay out and mark that one now because we cut it with the same chisel. Okay, here's how we lay out the double tusk tenons. Front legs, front face. These two faces here, the piece that we're trying to mortise into here now runs from this leg to this leg. So I want to come in 5/16 of an inch with a 1/4 inch mortise. I want to do it on both. There's two of them, but I want the dimension, the 5/16 inch dimension, to come off the face of the leg over here and the face of this leg over here, outside faces. But I will also want it to come off this face here the same way, because I'm going to put this face against the fence of the mortiser to cut this one. Then I'll flip it in for end to cut the other one. That'll position them in the same place. It'll also facilitate cutting of the tenon. So I got a square set for 5/16, marking one line, two lines, three lines, four lines. Then I have one for 9/16, marking one line, two lines, three lines, and four lines. So that locates the four mortises. Now I'm going to double check everything, then we'll start cutting the mortises. Now we're going to mortise the legs. This mortiser has an indexing table. Moves like so. It also will move in this direction, and you can set it there so that the mortise position in the wood, the chisel position in the wood, will be exactly in the same place on every leg. We've done one side here of this double tusk. I want to put the opposite side of the leg against the fence so that the mortise itself is in the same position relative to the outside face of the leg. I'm stacking the legs up like so. Just so that the chisel doesn't have to go down so far. You can put any kind of dummy underneath here. The depth of the cut is set to this position, so if you change the thickness of the dummy down here, you need to change the position of the cut. I don't care if the location of this mortise is off even a 1/16 of an inch. This is the outside face over here. What I care about is the dimension from the outside face to this edge of the mortise is the same on every single one of these mortises for the aprons. All the mortises are done, and we're ready to taper the legs. To keep from getting these mixed up and tapering the wrong side, I'm marking with a red crayon. We're going to taper the faces that are under the table, which means we're going to taper 2 surfaces only on each leg, and the outboard sides remain straight. So any face with a mortise gets tapered. So you can see I've got, these are tapered, these have been mortised with a crayon. Turn them over. The ones that are mortised have a red mark on them. So I got 4 tapers, and if I turn them over like so, these are outside faces and they're not tapered. And we should have another outside face that's not tapered, like that. So now the only thing to do is keep them straight so you don't taper the wrong end. Okay, we're at the table saw now. I've changed blades from a crosscut blade to a rip blade using this machined piece of cast iron. I'm squaring the blade to the table. Push a corner up against the blade. Look for daylight between the blade and the squaring device, and whether you use a square or something like this, it gets you to the same place. Very accurate. Here's my tapering jig. It's a homemade Steve Lauda design. Piece of MDF with a piece of oak over here screwed down. Another piece of oak and a piece of plywood screwed together. Hooks on like this, pushing over against the fence. Put a couple of pieces of paper underneath this thing like so. Shim it up a little bit. And then I clamp it to the fence. Just like you would any sacrificial fence, although this is not sacrificial. So now, I remove these shims. This will freely slide parallel to the fence, but it will not wander towards the blade. You take one of the legs. The top end of the leg is down here. The bottom of the leg is that way. There's a screw down here through a block. I'm going to push that screw into the end of the leg to hold it in place, about right there. And I've placed the bottom of the leg right on the line I want to cut. So the edge of this jig is parallel to the blade. So I'm leaving a 7/8 inch dimension at the bottom of the leg, feathering out to 0, right here at 6 inches. Right here where my thumb is 0. So I'm going to push it back here and set it against this screw. And then I got to check to see if it moved up here, and it did. So I need to move it back, check it again, clamp it down. So one clamp works fine. After it's clamped down, check it again, it works, it's where it needs to be. Now this piece over here is movable. It's a fence on top of the fence. I push it against this side of the leg, tighten these knobs. Theoretically, if all of these legs are machined to the same size, I can just put them against this fence and they'll all come out the same. Now I'm going to move this over towards the saw blade. I'm not going to put it right up against there. I'm going to leave a little gap between the fence and the blade so I have some wood to plane off with a hand plane later. So let's see how this works. Bring it back, I'll do the clamp. Put this on this red mark and cut it off. Put it against the stop over here, get back and set the screw, clamp it down. There's a taper leg. I left just a little bit, hand plane off, both of these surfaces. We've got 7 more to go. Right here we have 16 wedges cut off of the legs, and every single one of them has a red crayon mark on one of its faces. And over here we have the legs. Remember the triangle, tells us how they're oriented. The black one looks the same as the red one. And when we turn them around, look at them from the bottom towards the top, we can see they're all tapered on the inside, which means the side that will be under the table. It's very, very easy to cut one of these on the wrong side and ruin all your work. The only way to get it right is to have a system. There's more than one way to do this, but this way works. So let's move on now to whatever we're going to do next with these legs. Schuster is 4th in the ward. 40. When I cut these miters, in order to get this trapezoidal shape box that I want, what I've done is taken one of the offcuts of the tapering of the legs, which gives me the right slope, put it in here to shim up the stock. Then when I cut the miter, it won't be 90 degrees, it'll be whatever this offset is. So I cut the miter like so. This will get half of the miter. Then I cut the other side, give me the other half. So this little arrow right here marked on this piece of banding points up towards the top of the table. And the arrow is located on the corner, which is the outside corner of the table, meaning those two sides are not tapered. So this miter here is at 90 degrees. So it goes down here at the bottom where my thumb is. And all the other three miters, to be technically, I guess mathematically accurate, the other three miters need to have a taper, like I just cut. So technically this little box, which goes around right here, is not a rectilinear box. It is, in fact, a little truncated prism, slightly larger on the bottom than it is on the top. Recall that we cut these mortices in the legs while the legs were still square, that is, before they were tapered. So now we're going to make the tenons fit in these mortices. So I'm starting out with a sample piece of scrap that's the same width as the leg, and I've obviously carved away or cut away all the material between these two mortices, plus some more. You can see the gaps here and here. What I took away is more than the depth of that the tenons will ultimately be. Now what I'm going to do now is cut away this waste material over here on either side and creep up on the two lines that's inked in here, so we'll fit half the width of the tenons into the mortices. Here at the table saw, I put in a blade that'll cut a flat bottom, 1/4 inch wide curve. I have a tall fence that slides like so, and I've attached to that with clamps this vertical fence so that when I put the stock in here, the fence will stay vertical, very safe. My hands are a good distance from the saw blade. So what I'm going to do in this fashion, I'm going to nibble away at this material right here on the outside of the piece. So here's the joint on the test piece. What we have is the setup now to cut the outside faces of both of these tenons. You'll notice the void right in here, which I chopped away so I could be able to do this. So we'll cut these two faces on the drawer blades on the outside, and then we'll come back and start on the inside and with the same setup and cut the insides. Prior to making these cuts right here, I scored the depth of the cut with a marking gauge, like so, all the way around. When I made these cuts right here on the other end, I did not score it. The result was there's tear out here, there's tear out here, and on the other side, huge tear out right there. Ruined the piece. That's the practice piece. When I cut these, of course you can see the score line right here. Right there. There's no tear out at all. The score line, as deep as I can make it with the marking gauge, prevents the tear out. Now I've changed the setting on the miter gauge. I'm going to cut the 4 side aprons. They need to be identical. But again, I don't really care how long they are, within reason. But notice how I square one end, flip it over, keeping the same edge against the fence. So the ends are square. This is the edge that I marked to be square for this cut here. It's square. And the edges are square. These 2 aprons, which are at the back of the table, and the drawer blades at the front of each table, were cut at the same time to the same length. When I scribed the length of the tenons here, with this setting of the miter gauge, I saved it, and I'm going to scribe the length of the tenons on these aprons. Here's a square piece of stock. Here's the back piece of stock that I've milled up the same thickness. I have cut the tenon on this end of the scrap, and I left it a little fat so I could trim it up by hand so it fits. I'm putting the 1/4-inch tenon in the middle of the stock. The stock is 5/8 thick, so I've got 3/16 on either side and a 1/4-inch tenon left in the middle. So I've installed a cross-cut blade in the table saw. I've set the fence to establish the shoulder, and I've set the height of the blade to take off the 3/16. So I should be able to use this setup for the tenons on the sides as well as the back apron. So here goes. Here's the back apron and the lower drawer blade of a table. And I want to point out that these do not have to be the same length end to end. They must be the same length from shoulder to shoulder if you want the table to be square. So if I use the same setup for cutting the lengths, and then I can cut these tenons off of either piece, whatever length I like, leaving the shoulders the same, as precise as I know how to make. Joints are nice and tight. The work on the legs is done, and before glue up, I want to clean up the outside faces of the aprons. So I've got a fresh edge on the number 4 plane, and just going to clean these up now. I've got them all marked with a big I for inside, so I know which side to work on. A little bit of planer snipe right here. I want to get that out. Just out of curiosity, these shavings are about 1.5 thousandths. Last thing I want to do before the glue up is to lightly sand the surfaces of the legs and the aprons. And the last thing I want to do is soften these hard edges. So after cleaning up the outside faces of the aprons, I mark the bottom edge outside with a piece of chalk. Again, it's so very, very easy to get these mixed up. The purpose of that is I'm going to pass this over the router and make a quirk at the bottom. Okay, now to glue this up, I'm going to do it systematically. I'll dry fit the 2 back legs of one of the table. Clamp it up, the joints are tight. I put tape on the two mortises that I don't want to use. Make it impossible to screw this up. I'm going to use liquid hide glue because I don't want any squeeze out here. And if there is any, hide glue is much easier to deal with than yellow or white glue. I got everything ready here. Parts are in the right place. Got the clamps ready. These clamps have leather pads on them, so I don't need anything to protect the surface of the wood from damage from the clamps. This is a small table. It's never going to have any heavy loads on it. So I'm going to put glue in the mortises only. I'm not going to put any on the tenon. The reason for that is I want to do everything I can to keep squeeze out from happening. This glue is warm, so it flows quite freely. I want the top of the apron to be absolutely flush with the top of the leg. If I fail to do that, one of the legs is going to be either too long or too short. When I put anything like this in the side vise, by this I mean it overhangs a long distance and needs support on the far end. I made this stand, nothing but a pipe clamp. Slides up and down very easily. Support whatever height I need. So I hold it in the vise on this end. Just support it on that end, screwed to there's a floor flange that's screwed to a piece of wood at the bottom. Now I've dry fitted the two front legs. Take the clamps off. And again, these clamps have leather pads glued on. So I don't need any kind of a caul or anything to protect the wood from damage. Again, I'm going to put the glue in the mortise only so I don't get any squeeze out. Here I'm not really concerned with squeeze out. So I'll put glue on all these surfaces. Now, even though this is a dovetail joint here, I'm putting a clamp on here because I want to be sure that this joint here on that side is tight. So now I can check for square again. There's really not much way that this joint can get out of square. And it's not. It's as square as I can make it. Now we let these dry and we glue the two side aprons in. Okay, we've taken the front and back halves of this table out of the clamps. All the glue's dry. And now I've dry assembled it with a complete glue up. So here's what she looks like. Front and back. Checked all the joints, they're tight. And all of the aprons are flush with the top all the way around. So we're ready to glue this part up. So I've laid the parts out. I need to emphasize again that it's really easy to glue the wrong tenon into the wrong mortise. So to prevent that, I've laid these parts out so that they can be folded up like so. And these fold up like so. This tenon goes in that mortise. Another precaution I've taken is put a little red dot right here on top of this apron, a red dot on the top of the post. 1 dot, 2 dots, 3 dots, and 4 dots. It's another precaution to prevent gluing it up the wrong way. Now the sequence here matters as well. I've got to put both of these on and then add that one. If I glue this, this, and this together, can't get that apron in. It's obvious, but you can get it wrong. So 3 dots and 3 dots. I'm going to put just a wee bit of glue on the tenon, but I want to avoid the squeeze out. I'm certainly not going to overdo it. Okay, the quirk goes on the bottom like so. 1 dot, 1 dot. Okay, the quirk goes on the bottom, on the outside. Just continually double checking to be sure I'm not making a mistake that's going to be real costly. Now put some glue in the other mortices, getting the excess glue off. Now it would be easy to pick this part up and set it on that side, but I don't want to risk any chance of this glue with such a low viscosity dripping out onto the finished piece. So I'm going to take the heavier part, set it this way, and I'm going to pull it together with clamps while it's upside down. Okay, that's good. Now turn it over to the other side. Okay, we've got the first table glued up. Now I want to glue up the second one. I'm going to glue it up upside down. I've already fit it together. The joints are tight, and the legs, top of the legs and the top of the aprons can be made flush. So what I'm going to do, when I set the table on the floor so I can readily see the top, I want to check it for square. I like to use centimeters when I measure this. It's easier to get by without a wrong reading. So this measures 53.5 centimeters, and that's 53.4. It's a little long this way. So to fix that, I could put a clamp across here and squeeze this ever so slightly. But what I'm going to do instead is take this clamp loose, and I'm going to move it. My left here is coming towards me, and my right is going away from me. So the clamp is no longer parallel to the apron. Let's see what effect that had on this. And this was 53.5 a minute ago, and now it is 53 and a strong 0.3. So that's all it took to move it like 1.5 millimeters. And over here it is now 53.4. That's as close to square as I can get it. So we'll let it dry. Now what? Dadgummit!